When the city's map revealed faults no one was supposed to see, she thought it was just another technical glitch. But then, the man who ruled the entire underground appeared and tried to silence her. What he didn't expect was that the only threat powerful enough to shake him would be the woman who saw beyond the walls and beyond him. Truth sparks danger, especially when desire is born in the one place it's forbidden, between two enemies who can't afford to retreat. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, turn on notifications, and hype this video so our stories can reach even more hearts. There are people who rule visible empires, and there are those who command what no one else ever sees. Daniel Pritzker belonged to the second category, and he preferred it that way. 63 meters beneath the city's financial district, in a reinforced concrete corridor where silence felt like a physical presence, Daniel walked with the precision of someone who knew every centimeter of that underground labyrinth. His footsteps echoed softly against the industrial floor, but he no longer heard them. The sound of the subsoil had become part of him years ago. It was not discomfort. It was absolute control. He stopped before a monitoring panel set into the wall, typed a sequence of codes, and watched the data appear on the screen. Water pressure stable, temperature within parameters, no structural anomalies detected. Everything was functioning exactly as it should, exactly as it always did under his command. Daniel Pritzker never raised his voice. He never needed. His power was invisible, silent, implacable. While politicians delivered speeches and businessmen posed for magazine covers, he kept entire cities running from an underground network that few knew existed, and even fewer understood. Service tunnels, technical corridors, electrical cable galleries, ventilation ducts, emergency passages. Everything went through him. Everything answered to him. He adjusted the cuff of his shirt beneath the flawless suit. Wearing a suit underground was impractical. But Daniel had never been a man who surrendered visual control. Appearance mattered, not out of vanity, out of strategy. When someone saw him, even 60 meters below street level, they immediately knew who was in command. Scott Farrell, his partner and the only person allowed to provoke him without fatal consequences, appeared at the far end of the corridor with that relaxed walk that always irritated Daniel in ways he could not explain. "Are you going to spend the, entire day down here? Or will you come up to sign the contracts I left on your desk last week?" Scott asked, leaning back against the wall with his arms crossed. Daniel did not take his eyes off the screen. "The contracts can wait. The structures cannot." Of course, because nothing says emotionally healthy balance like a CEO who prefers tunnels over meetings. Daniel finally looked at him. "I prefer efficiency over conversation." Scott smiled. "I know. That is why you still do not have a personal life." Daniel resumed typing on the panel. "My personal life is extremely functional. Your personal life consists of sleeping 4 hours a night and checking humidity sensors at 2 in the morning on Saturdays." "Functional," Daniel repeated without humor. Scott sighed, though there was affection in the gesture. They had worked together for 15 years. They knew each other far too well to pretend otherwise. "One day you will realize that controlling everything does not protect you from anything." Daniel did not answer, because Scott was wrong. Controlling everything was exactly what protected him. It always had. While Daniel Pritzker kept descending into concrete structures and buried secrets, Hannah Lewis was doing exactly the opposite. She was climbing, literally, suspended 40 meters high on an improvised inspection platform, held only by safety cables and pure stubbornness. Hannah adjusted the thermal camera against the side of a commercial building that, according to official records, had no structural issues whatsoever. According to official records, many things had no issues, and that was precisely why Hannah existed, to find what official records hid. "Allison, increase the resolution. I'm seeing a thermal anomaly on the east sector," Hannah said into the radio, fastening the equipment to her backpack while balancing her weight with the ease of someone who had spent years ignoring advice about personal safety. Her colleague's voice crackled through the radio. "Hannah, you are hanging off a 12-story building with a rope I bought on sale. Can we talk about anomalies when you are on solid ground?" "The rope was on sale?" Hannah asked, genuinely curious. "No, But I loved the panic in your voice. Hannah smiled. Allison was irritating and essential. Urban cartographer specializing in invisible risks. That was Hannah Lewis's official title. In practice, it meant she spent her days hunting for cracks, failures, inconsistencies, and lies buried beneath layers of bureaucracy, concrete, and corporate pride. She loved the work. She loved dismantling official maps and rebuilding them with the truth. She loved proving she was right when everyone insisted she was wrong. And most of all, she loved challenging powerful men who believed they could hide structural problems simply because they had enough money and influence to buy silence. She finished capturing the images, descended with her usual reckless confidence, and landed on the ground with a satisfied breath. Allison waited for her with crossed arms and an expression that swung between exasperation and admiration. "You are going to die doing this one day," Allison said. "Probably, but I will die being right. I am not sure that will fit on a tombstone." Hannah laughed. "It will, and it will be in large letters." Allison shook her head but smiled. "Did you find anything?" "I always find something." Hannah pulled the tablet from her backpack and showed the thermal images. "Look at this. Active infiltration on the east sector. Compromised structure. And no one knows because no one wanted to look. Or because someone paid to keep people from looking." "Exactly." Allison examined the images. "Who are you going to give this to?" "To the city hall, as always." "And what will they do? File it away and forget it?" Hannah smiled. A sharp smile. "Not if I make enough noise." Making noise was Hannah Lewis's specialty, and she was about to make much more than that. The encounter happened exactly 3 hours later, in a place where neither of them should have been. Hannah had received an emergency call from the city hall. Anomaly detected in a critical underground sector. Clearance granted for immediate technical inspection. She grabbed her equipment, descended the service stairs, and entered the city's underground network without imagining she was stepping into highly surveilled territory. The signage was confusing, or non-existent. Hannah followed the coordinates provided, crossed 2 concrete corridors lit only by emergency lights, and stopped before a metal door marked "Restricted Access. Authorization Required." She checked the tablet. The coordinates indicated that the anomaly was on the other side of that door. Hannah pushed. The door opened. She stepped inside, and that was exactly when Daniel Pritzker appeared behind her like a silent and profoundly irritated shadow. "You are in a restricted area." The voice was low, controlled, carrying an authority so natural that Hannah felt her body react before her mind processed it. She turned slowly and found a tall man in a dark suit, penetrating eyes, and an expression suspended between disbelief and something dangerously close to an intense interest, far too unprofessional. Hannah lifted her chin. "I am doing my job. Your job does not include trespassing on private property. Trespassing is a dramatic word. I prefer investigating structural failures that the City Hall sent me to investigate." Daniel stepped forward. "The City Hall has no jurisdiction here. It does when the structure impacts public sectors, and this one does." He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made Hannah tighten her grip on the tablet. It was not nervousness. It was pure irritation toward that type of man who believed he could intimidate anyone simply by existing. "Who are you?" Daniel asked. "Hannah Lewis, urban cartographer, specialist in invisible risks, and you are?" "Daniel Pritzker." The surname fell between them like a silent bomb. Hannah blinked. Of course it had to be him. The invisible magnate, the subterranean emperor, the man who controlled kilometers of tunnels, corridors, and buried secrets. "Ah, the owner of the underground castle." Daniel arched an eyebrow. "Castle? Would you prefer Shadow Empire? Concrete? Kingdom? Pick the metaphor, I can adapt." Something shifted in his expression. It was not anger. It was something worse. It was amusement. "Do you have authorization to be here?" "I have authorization from the City Hall, which means nothing in this sector." Hannah crossed her arms. "Then remove me." Daniel did not move. He simply kept looking at her with those eyes that seemed to decipher every breath, every gesture, every unspoken word. "Leave. Make me." The silence that followed was charged, dense, dangerous. Then Daniel smiled. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but it was there. You are going to regret this. Hannah smiled back. I am certain I will not. She walked past him, feeling the heat of his body even without touching him, and left the corridor with her heart racing and her mind boiling with irritation, and something indefinable she refused to name. Daniel remained still, watching her go, and Scott, who had witnessed everything from a distance, approached with an insufferably smug smile. Congratulations, you just met the first person who is not afraid of you. Daniel did not reply, because Scott was right, and that was a problem. The official notification arrived the next morning, and Daniel read the document 3 times before accepting that it was not an administrative mistake. It was bureaucratic sabotage. Someone at City Hall had approved a full audit of the underground infrastructure of Pritzker Infrastructure, and the EJI name of the technical lead was printed in letters that seemed larger than they truly were. Hannah Lewis. Scott walked into the office without knocking, just as he always did when he wanted to irritate Daniel on purpose, and dropped into the leather armchair in front of the desk with a smile Daniel knew far too well. Let me guess, Scott began, crossing his legs with that calculated casualness he cultivated like an art form. You are deciding whether to sue the City Hall, discredit the cartographer, or simply seal every access point and pretend none of this is happening. Daniel closed the document and looked at his partner with the neutral expression he used in difficult negotiations. I am deciding how someone managed to approve an audit without consulting the audited company. It is called a public contract. It is called law. It is called, you do not own the entire city, only the underground. Funny. I know. Scott leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. But let us get to the point. The woman who stood up to you yesterday is now going to spend the next few months walking through your tunnels, digging into your files, questioning your decisions. Congratulations. You have achieved what every CEO dreams of. Hostile technical supervision. Daniel reached for the phone. I will call the lawyers. Of course. Because nothing calms an ego conflict better than expensive lawyers. Daniel paused, fingers hovering above the screen. Scott had that irritating talent of being right at the worst possible moment. What do you suggest? Scott smiled. That you cooperate, show transparency, make her work easier, and perhaps discover that she is not your enemy, just someone doing her job. She trespassed in a restricted area. Technically, she followed the coordinates City Hall provided. If someone made a mistake, it was the system, not her. Daniel hated when Scott applied logic where he preferred to apply control. She is problem. She is interesting. Admit it. Daniel put the phone down and leaned back in the chair, looking through the panoramic window that overlooked the urban horizon. Below, invisible to any passerby, stretched the underground network he commanded. And now someone was going to enter it. Someone who was not afraid of him. Someone who had called him an emperor of tunnels and walked away as if she had won a battle. Scott watched him in silence for a few seconds before standing. She starts tomorrow, 7 a.m. West Sector. Will you be there? Daniel did not answer, but Scott knew he would. Hannah arrived at the exact time, wearing sturdy cargo pants, a black thermal shirt beneath a technical vest full of pockets, and safety boots that had seen better days. Her wavy brown hair was pulled into a practical ponytail, and she carried a bulky backpack that probably weighed more than it looked. Allison accompanied her to the West Sector entrance, checking her own equipment list while casting curious glances at the administrative building of Pritzker Infrastructure. So, this is where the mysterious magnate runs his shadow empire, Allison commented, adjusting her backpack strap. Do not start. Start what? I am only observing. It is a beautiful building, modern, minimalist, slightly authoritarian. It suits him. Hannah looked at her colleague. You saw him for 30 seconds. Long enough? A man in a suit in an underground tunnel? He is either obsessive or hiding something, or both. He has both. Allison smiled. You thought about him a lot last night? I thought about how irritating he is. Irritating is an interesting choice of word. Most people would say arrogant, controlling, cold, but you chose irritating, as if he affected you personally. Hannah stopped walking and glared at her friend. Allison, focus, work, structures, cracks, anomalies. Those are the things that matter today. Of course, structures, cracks, anomalies. Allison paused dramatically. And irritating magnates. Before Hannah could reply, the access door opened and Daniel appeared, punctual as a Swiss clock and just as expressive. He wore another suit, this one charcoal, and Hannah briefly wondered if the man owned any clothes that did not look like they belonged in an international business magazine. 7 o'clock, he said, checking the watch on his wrist. A watch that, Hannah noted with annoyance, probably cost more than all the technical equipment she carried. Punctuality, first positive surprise. I could say the same, but I expected you to send someone in your place. Powerful men rarely handle the dirty work. I do not consider supervising my own infrastructure dirty work. Supervising. What a delicate word for ensuring I do not find anything you prefer to keep hidden. His eyes narrowed slightly, though the rest of his face remained impassive. If there were something to hide, you would not be here. Or I am here precisely because there is something to hide and you need to control it. Allison cleared her throat discreetly. I will check the equipment. I will leave you to discuss security protocols. She slipped into the corridor before Hannah could protest. Daniel gestured to the entrance. After you. How gallant. Or is it a strategy to observe me from behind? Both. The blunt honesty caught Hannah off guard, but she refused to show it. She stepped into the corridor, feeling the weight of his gaze on her back and hated how much it unsettled her. It was not fear. It was something closer to recognition, as if her body knew, before her mind processed, that this man was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with business or underground structures. The main corridor of the west sector was wide, well lit, and absolutely immaculate. Smooth concrete, clear signage, humidity sensors embedded in the walls, security cameras at regular intervals. It was efficient. It was controlled. It was exactly what Hannah expected from someone like Daniel, but she was not interested in what was visible. She was interested in what was hidden. I need access to the maintenance records from the last 5 years, she said, pulling her tablet from her backpack, especially structural inspection reports and emergency intervention logs. They are already available in the system. Access was granted this morning. Full access or edited? Access. Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. They were in the middle of the corridor, the cold lighting casting angular shadows across his face, emphasizing the sharp line of his jaw and the intensity of his gaze. Do you really think I would edit official documents to mislead an audit? I think powerful men do whatever is necessary to protect what they have built, and you seem very accustomed to protecting things. Protecting is not the same as hiding. Sometimes it is. It depends on what is being protected. They stood still, the space between them shrinking even though neither of them moved. The corridor did that. The forced proximity, the acoustics that amplified every breath, every shift. Hannah could feel the heat radiating from his body. She could see the way the muscles of his neck tightened beneath the flawless collar of his shirt, and she hated how distracting it was. I am going to work, she said, breaking eye contact and walking forward. Daniel followed in silence, and Hannah realized with growing irritation that he was not merely supervising. He was studying. He observed every move she made, every note she took, every photograph she captured of the structures. He was methodical, calculated, and extremely unsettling. Do you always work like this? He asked after 20 minutes of silence. Like what? Like you are looking for war. Hannah lowered her camera and faced him. I look for failures. If that looks like war, to you, perhaps the problem is not with me. Or perhaps you mistake diligence for hostility. And perhaps you mistake control for competence. Daniel tilted his head, and for the first time since they met, Hannah saw something close to a real smile. Not joyful, recognizing as if he had finally found someone who spoke his language. You are difficult. Thank you. It was not a compliment. I know, but I will take it as one. They continued walking, descending a narrow metal staircase that led to a deeper level. The temperature dropped a few degrees and the distant hum of machinery echoed along the walls. Hannah switched on the helmet-mounted light, adjusted the strap of her backpack, and focused on the sensors appearing along the path. This was where the real work began. Far from the showpiece areas, far from the cameras, far from the performative efficiency companies like Pritzker loved to display. Daniel remained close, too close to be casual. Hannah, felt his presence like a constant pressure, a shadow that moved in sync with her steps, anticipating every motion. "You do not trust anyone," she commented, checking a control panel embedded in the wall. "I trust the right people, and I am not on that list. You trespassed on my property." Not exactly a promising start. I followed the coordinates City Hall provided. If there was trespassing, the system is to blame, not me. Daniel stayed silent for a few seconds, and Hannah realized, surprised, that he was considering the argument. Not agreeing, merely considering. And that, coming from a man like him, was almost impressive. "You speak like someone who has faced many closed doors," he said, his voice lower, almost contemplative. Hannah paused, her hand resting on the panel. The observation was far too precise to be casual, and she hated how it disarmed her. Everyone deals with closed doors. The difference is that some people learn to break them down. Others learn to build even stronger ones. "And you? Which did you learn?" "Both." Daniel stepped forward, and the space between them became nearly non-existent. Hannah could see the details of his face now, the neatly trimmed beard, the way his eyes reflected the beam of her light, creating a glow that was both cold and intense. "You are complicated, Hannah, and you are predictable, Daniel." Predictable? Powerful man, controlling, averse to interference, accustomed to having the last word. "I have seen dozens like you." "Then I am not that interesting," she smiled. "I did not say that." The answer slipped out before she could filter it, and Hannah regretted it instantly. Because now, the smile that appeared on his face was not a professional one. It was something dangerous, something that made her stomach twist in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Before either of them could speak, the corridor lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely. The darkness was instant and absolute. Hannah activated her helmet light by reflex, but the beam illuminated only a narrow slice in front of her. Daniel was so close that she nearly bumped into him when she turned. "Electrical failure?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Impossible. The backup generators activate in 3 seconds. 3 seconds passed. Nothing happened. Hannah felt him move, his hand brushing her arm as he reached for his communicator. The touch was brief, accidental, but enough for her to feel the heat through the fabric of her vest. And she hated how her body reacted, how her skin tingled, how her breath shortened. "Scott, failure in the west sector. Level 3. Generators did not respond." Scott's voice crackled through the radio, distorted by interference. "Checking. Stand by." They stood still in the darkness, only Hannah's light illuminating the tight space around them. The distant hum of the machines sounded louder now, heavier, as if the absence of light sharpened every other sense. Hannah could hear his breathing, steady, deep. She could smell the woody fragrance he wore, mixed with something she could not identify, but that made her want to step closer and step away at the same time. "Are you afraid of the dark?" Daniel asked, his voice low, almost intimate. "I'm afraid of unstable structures in the dark. This structure is solid. Every structure is solid until it no longer is." He did not respond immediately, but Hannah felt the weight of his gaze even without seeing him, and then, without warning, his hand touched hers. It was not accidental this time. It was intentional. Fingers finding fingers in the dark, a touch that lasted half a second before he withdrew. But it was enough. It was enough for Hannah to feel her pulse quicken, enough for her stomach to tighten, enough for her to realize, with irritating clarity, that this was not merely work. It was not simply professional friction. It was something else, something she was not ready to name. The lights returned suddenly, and Hannah blinked against the abrupt brightness, stepping away from Daniel on instinct. He remained exactly where he was, watching her with that unreadable expression she was beginning to hate. "System failure?" Scott's voice echoed through the radio. "Resolved. Apologies for the inconvenience." Daniel turned off the communicator and placed it inside the inner pocket of his suit jacket. "Let us continue." Hannah nodded, unable to form words, and walked ahead. But something had shifted, and they both knew it. When Hannah finally emerged from the underground 3 hours later, Allison was waiting with 2 coffees and a smile that promised inevitable questions. "So," Allison handed her one of the cups, "how was it working with the Emperor of Shadows?" "Irritating. You already said that." I need new adjectives. Controlling, observant, unsettling. Allison raised her eyebrows. Unsettling, that one is new. Hannah drank her coffee, grateful for the distraction. He does not move away. He analyzes every movement, every word. It is suffocating. Or he is genuinely interested in what you are doing. Or he is trying to intimidate me into giving up. You do not give up on anything. He must know that. Hannah did not respond, because Allison was right, and Daniel probably knew it as well, which meant he had another reason for being so present. And Hannah was not sure she wanted to discover what that reason was. Will you see him again tomorrow? Allison asked. Unfortunately. Hannah, just an observation. You talked about him for the last 20 minutes. That is not normal. Hannah looked at her friend. I am processing the workday. You are processing him. That is ridiculous. It is observation, and I am very good at it. Allison finished her coffee and threw the cup in the trash. Just do not let pride blind you. Sometimes, the most irritating person is exactly the one we need to meet. Hannah did not respond, because deep down, she knew Allison was right, and that frightened her more than any structural crack ever could. 3 weeks of underground work had taught Hannah a few things about Daniel Pritzker. First, he did not bluff. When he said the systems were efficient, he genuinely believed it. Second, he was rarely wrong about technical matters, which made it even more irritating when she found something he had overlooked. Third, and most unsettling, he was always present. He did not send subordinates. He did not delegate supervision. He was there, watching, analyzing, existing in the same space as she did in a way that was beginning to affect Hannah's concentration in ways she refused to admit out loud. But that Tuesday morning, everything changed. Hannah was in the East Sector, one of the oldest sections of the underground network, when the numbers simply stopped making sense. She had spent the last 2 hours comparing 8 years of structural inspection reports with the measurements she herself was taking, and the discrepancy was impossible to ignore. They were not rounding errors. They were not acceptable technical margins. They were deliberate omissions. Someone had altered data, and not long ago, she photographed the cracks in the west wall of the tunnel, recorded moisture readings that were 30% higher than the official reports, and documented corrosion on the metal supports that supposedly had been replaced 18 months earlier. Except the corrosion clearly indicated at least 4 years of continuous exposure. Someone had lied, or someone had been deceived. Hannah went up to the administrative office without warning, without scheduling a meeting, without following protocol. She walked past the receptionist who tried to stop her, ignored the assistant who ran after her asking her to wait, and entered Daniel's office as if she owned the place. He was on the phone, his back to the door, looking out at the panoramic window facing the city. His voice was low, controlled, wearing that calm authority he used like armor. When he heard the door open without ceremony, he turned slowly, and the expression he found on Hannah's face was enough for him to end the call without a goodbye. Hannah, we need to talk, now. Daniel dismissed his assistant with a subtle gesture and closed the door. There is a protocol for requesting meetings. There is a protocol for falsifying inspection reports too, but it seems no one followed that one. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Daniel crossed his arms, leaning against the edge of his desk, studying Hannah with that look she now knew well. Evaluative, calculated, dangerous. Explain. Hannah tossed the tablet onto the desk with more force than necessary. East Sector, Tunnel 17. The reports say the structure was inspected 6 months ago and approved without reservations. Lie. There are progressive cracks, excessive moisture, and corrosion in supports that should have been replaced. Someone signed falsified documents, and those documents carry your company's seal. Daniel took the tablet and examined the images in silence. Hannah watched every micro-expression, every small shift in his jaw muscles, every movement of his eyes over the data. He did not look surprised. He looked contained, as if processing information he had suspected but preferred not to confirm. Who conducted the last inspection? He asked, his voice still controlled, but with an undercurrent of something harder beneath it. According to the report, internal technical team, signed by Trevor Hastings. Daniel closed the tablet and handed it back. Hastings does not work here anymore. He was fired 4 months ago. Why? Technical negligence. Hannah felt her stomach twist. You knew he was signing false reports? I knew he was cutting corners. I did not know the extent. And you did not investigate? I investigated, and I fired him. But you did not review every report he signed. You did not check whether there were more hidden failures. Hannah stepped forward, the anger rising like a wave she could not contain. How many other tunnels have problems you are ignoring because it is easier to pretend they do not exist? Daniel stood, and the difference in height became even more evident. He did not need to move closer to dominate the space. His presence did that on its own. I do not ignore problems. I solve problems. And I was solving this before you decided to invade my office. Solve? Firing someone and hoping no one else finds out is not solving. It is covering up. Be careful with your accusations, Hannah. Or what? You will fire me too? Sue me? Intimidate me until I stay quiet? Hannah crossed her arms, chin lifted, openly challenging him. I do not work for you. I work for the truth. And the truth is that your company hid structural failures that put lives at risk. Will this stay here? No, it will not. It will go into my reports, with my name signed at the bottom. Daniel tilted his head, and something dangerous flashed in his eyes. It was not anger, it was recognition, as if he finally saw Hannah for what she truly was, not a technical auditor, a threat. You do not understand how things work. I understand perfectly. Powerful man makes mistake. Powerful man hides mistake. Powerful man uses money and influence to make sure no one questions it. But guess what? I question. I always question. And I do not care if that bothers you. It does not bother me. Lie. I see the way you tense your jaw every time I find something you would rather keep hidden. I see how you measure every word, every gesture, every breath to avoid losing control. But I am not your employees. I am not afraid of you. Daniel stepped forward, closing the space between them until Hannah could feel the heat of his body. The woody scent of his cologne mixed with something more masculine, more visceral. His voice came low, laced with something she could not decipher. You should be. Hannah held his gaze, refusing to step back. Why? Because you control tunnels? Because you have money? Because no one has dared say no to you before? She smiled, sharp and dangerous. A man who hides data is as dangerous as a structure that cracks, and I will expose both. For a moment, neither of them moved. The office was silent, the only sound their breathing filling the space. Hannah could see every detail of his face now, the way the light from the window cast shadows along his jawline, the intensity of the eyes studying every thought she tried to suppress, the tension in his shoulders signaling control on the verge of breaking. And then, Daniel stepped back. Leave. With pleasure. Hannah grabbed her tablet and walked out of the office without looking back. Yet she felt his gaze clinging to her spine until the door closed. Scott found Daniel 10 minutes later, still standing in the same place, staring at the door as if he could bring Hannah back by sheer will. Let me guess. Scott began, sitting in the armchair with his deliberate casualness. She found something. You tried to control it. She exploded. You two argued. And now you are here, processing the fact that someone actually had the courage to confront you. Daniel turned to him. Hastings falsified reports more than I thought. I know, I received her data as well. I already activated the team to review every document he signed. Scott paused. But that is not what you are thinking about right now. No? No. You are thinking about her. About the way she walked in here without permission, threw the truth in your face, and left as if she had won a war. Daniel did not answer. Scott smiled. You are not upset because she is wrong. You're upset because she gets under your skin. That is ridiculous. It is observation, and I have known you long enough to know when you are lying to yourself. Scott walked to the window and stood beside him. She is different. She is not afraid of you. She does not bow. She does not accept half-truths. And that fascinates you as much as it irritates you. She is inconvenient. She is honest. A rare thing in our world. Daniel remained silent for a long moment. Then, he finally admitted, she unsettles me. Good, you need to be unsettled. Hannah drove to her parents' house without planning to. She simply got in the car and went, needing something that was not tunnels, reports, or irritating men who occupied far too much space in her mind. Miranda opened the door before Hannah even knocked, as she always did. and welcomed her with a hug that lasted long enough for a portion of Hannah's tension to dissolve. "I thought you were having lunch with us." "Today," Miranda said, guiding her inside. "Sorry, work became complicated." "Complicated or irritating?" Hannah looked at her mother. "Both." Kirk was in the kitchen, preparing sandwiches with the precision of someone who turned simple tasks into rituals. He waved at Hannah without stopping what he was doing, and she felt a wave of affection for that quiet man who always knew when to speak and when to simply exist in the same space. "Tell us," Miranda said, sitting at the table, "and you," gesturing for Hannah to do the same. "I found failures, serious ones, hidden ones, and the owner of the company tried to shut me up. Tried or succeeded?" "Tried," Miranda smiled. "Good girl." Hannah drank the juice her father placed in front of her. "But he is unbearable, controlling, arrogant. He thinks he can solve everything on his own, that he can hide problems and no one will question anything. And you questioned. Obviously. How did he react?" Hannah paused, remembering the way Daniel had looked at her. The tension, the intensity, the dangerous closeness. Badly. He reacted badly. Miranda exchanged a look with Kirk, one of those glances that couples of decades develop as their own language. "What was that?" Hannah asked, suspicious. "Nothing. I just found it interesting." "Interesting what?" "You are talking about him a lot." Hannah frowned. "I am talking about work. You are talking about him. The way he reacted. The way he looked at you. The way he unsettles you." Miranda tilted her head, studying her daughter with that irritating maternal perception. "It is not only about work, is it? It is completely about work. Hannah, mother, he is arrogant, controlling, and irritating. There is nothing beyond professional friction." Kirk set a sandwich in front of Hannah and finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "Professional friction does not make you drive here without warning and talk about a man for 10 minutes straight." Without taking a breath, Hannah opened her mouth to protest but closed it again. Because Kirk was right, and that was exactly what scared her. "He irritates me." "Good sign," Miranda said, smiling. "How is that a good sign?" "Because you only get irritated by people who actually affect you. The others you simply ignore." Hannah ate her sandwich in silence, refusing to process that observation. Later, back at home, Hannah spread the maps across the dining table and began tracing the underground routes she had documented over the past few weeks. It was an old habit. Turning data into visual images helped her mind find patterns that numbers alone did not reveal. She marked every inspection point, every anomaly, every discrepancy, connected the main tunnels with the secondary galleries, layered the infrastructure sheets on top of each other, and that is when she saw it. A line, a stretch that should not exist. Hannah pulled the official maps provided by the City Hall and by Pritzker Infrastructure and compared them. The section was not registered. There was no documentation, no history. It was as if someone had simply erased that piece of reality. She picked up the phone and called Allison. "I found something." "Of course you did. You always do. What is it this time?" "An unregistered underground section. No official map shows it. No report mentions it. But it exists. I saw the structural connections. It is there." Allison remained silent for a few seconds. "This is big, Hannah." "I know. Are you going to confront him?" Hannah looked at the map, at the line that should not exist, at the secret Daniel Pritzker kept buried under layers of concrete and silence. "I am. He is not going to like it." "I know. You enjoy provoking this man, do you not?" Hannah ended the call without answering, because Allison was right, and that was a bigger problem than any structural failure. Hannah did not wait until the next morning. She did not follow protocol. She did not send a formal email requesting clarification. On Wednesday night at 9 o'clock, she returned to the Pritzker Infrastructure building with the maps in her backpack and a determination that bordered on recklessness. The security guard at the reception tried to stop her, but she simply showed the temporary access badge provided by City Hall and headed to the elevators before he could question her. Daniel was still in his office. Of course he was. Men, like him, did not keep schedules. They kept obsessions disguised as professional ethics. She walked in without knocking. He was sitting at his desk, tie loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, studying documents illuminated only by the desk lamp. The scene had something cinematic about it. The solitary magnate working while the city slept, But Hannah was not there to admire aesthetics. She was there for answers. Daniel lifted his eyes when the door opened, and his expression shifted from surprise to something close to resignation. You really have no boundaries, do you? Boundaries are for people who accept half-truths. Hannah threw the maps onto the desk, scattering them over the documents he had been reading. Explain this. Daniel looked at the maps without touching them. Let me guess. You found another inconsistency, another failure, another reason to accuse me of negligence. I found an entire section that does not officially exist, an underground corridor that shows up in no records, no maps, no reports. But the structural connections are there. I saw them, photographed them, measured them. Hannah pointed at the line she had marked in red. This runs from the east sector to an area that does not even have official classification. And you know it. You have always known. Daniel finally picked up one of the maps, studying it with the meticulous attention she already knew well. But there was something different in his posture now. It was not defensive. It was tired, as if carrying secrets had a physical weight he could no longer hold alone. It is not documented because it was not supposed to exist, but it exists. Existing and being official are different things. Hannah crossed her arms. Translate that into honest language. Daniel leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face with both hands in a gesture so human, so stripped of his usual armor that Hannah almost felt sympathy. Almost. My father built that section 30 years ago, without authorization, without documentation, without following a single safety regulation. He spoke slowly, as if each word cost him something. When I took over the company, I found out. I wanted to demolish it, seal it, erase it. But I cannot, because it connects to public structures, and revealing its existence would mean admitting that Pritzker infrastructure operated illegally for decades. Hannah processed the information, feeling her initial anger morph into something more complex. So you hid it. You chose to keep the secret rather than correct the mistake. I chose not to destroy the company's reputation and throw hundreds of employees out of work because of decisions I did not make. But you inherited. Inheriting is not choosing. Hannah pulled out a chair and sat, not because she was comfortable, but because her legs suddenly felt less reliable. How many people know? 3. Me, Scott, and now you. And no one ever questioned it? No one ever noticed the structural inconsistencies? You are the first external auditor in 20 years, and the first who actually pays attention. He looked at her, and there was something different in his eyes now. Not challenge. Recognition. I knew you would find it. It was only a matter of time. Then why did you not tell me earlier? Because telling you would mean trusting you, and I do not trust anyone, not even me, especially not you. The answer should have irritated her, but it did not. Because Hannah understood. Daniel protected what was his with the ferocity of someone who had lost control before and sworn never to allow it again. I need to see it, she said. No, I am not asking for permission. Hannah, that section is dangerous. It has not been properly maintained. There is no functional lighting, no updated ventilation systems. It is a real structural risk. Then I need to see it even more. Daniel stood, walked around the desk, and stopped in front of her, far too close for the moment to be casual. Why can you not simply accept a no? Why can you not simply trust? They stood there, staring at each other, the space between them charged with something that did not have a name but burned like slow fire. Hannah could see the details of his face under the soft light of the lamp, the way the beard shadowed his jawline, the line of his mouth, the intensity in his eyes that seemed to read every breath she took. If I take you there, he said, his voice lower, do you promise this stays between us until we decide what to do? That depends on what I find. That is not negotiable. Then I will not promise. Daniel let out a short, humorless laugh. You are stubborn. So are you. The difference is that I have the power to stop you. Try. He held her gaze for a few more seconds before giving in. Tomorrow, 6 in the morning, and you go with me. No Allison, no team, just the two of us. Why? Because if something goes wrong down there, I would rather only one reckless person be at risk, not two. Hannah smiled. Such distorted chivalry. It is the best I can offer. The next morning, Hannah arrived 10 minutes early and found Daniel already waiting at the entrance to the east sector. He wore dark cargo pants, sturdy boots, and a black shirt under a technical vest that, surprisingly, made him look less like a businessman and more like a human being. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he had just woken up, and Hannah noticed with irritation that she liked this version of him, the version that was not polished, not in absolute control. "Ready to regret this?" he asked, handing her a helmet with a built-in light. "I was born ready." They descended a service staircase Hannah had never seen before, passed through 2 locked gates that Daniel opened with codes he clearly had memorized, and finally reached a narrow corridor that smelled of dampness, earth, and something indefinable that made her stomach twist slightly. The lighting was poor. Only a few emergency lamps spaced irregularly, creating pockets of shadow that swallowed more than they revealed. The walls were old concrete, streaked with damp stains like dark veins, and the sound of their own footsteps echoed strangely, distorted, as if the space were larger than it appeared. "Your father built this alone?" Hannah asked, touching the wall and feeling its rough texture under her fingers. "He hired a small team, paid in cash. No official record, no signed contract." Daniel walked ahead, the beam from his helmet cutting through the darkness. He was brilliant, but he was also reckless. He thought rules were for ordinary people, not for the Pritzkers. "You do not agree." "I am still paying for his mistakes." Hannah heard something in his voice. It was not resentment, it was weight. The kind that comes from carrying responsibilities. One never asked for but cannot abandon. "Did you love him?" Daniel stopped and turned to face her. The light from the lantern cast dramatic shadows across his features, highlighting the sharp line of his jaw, the depth of his eyes. "I loved him, and I hated him, sometimes at the same time." Did he know? Probably. But men like him do not care what others feel. They care what others do. He started walking again. "He taught me how to build empires, but he forgot to teach me how to live inside them." Hannah followed in silence, processing that confession. It was the first time Daniel had spoken about his father, the first time he had lowered his guard enough to let someone see beyond the corporate armor. They continued descending until they reached a particularly deteriorated section. The concrete had visible cracks, moisture streamed down the walls in narrow trickles, and the smell of mold was suffocating. "Here," Daniel said, pointing to a rusted metal plate. Attached to the wall, it was written in a code Hannah did not recognize. "My father used his own codes, never shared them with anyone. It took me years to decipher." Hannah photographed the plate, recorded the humidity levels, documented the cracks. She was so focused she barely noticed when a chunk of concrete broke loose from the ceiling and fell mere inches from her. Daniel pulled her back instinctively, his hand closing around her arm with enough force to make it clear it was not a suggestion. It was command. They stayed still, pressed close by the narrowness of the corridor, waiting to see if more debris would fall. It did not, but neither of them moved. Hannah could feel the heat of his body through their layers of clothing, could hear the shift in his breathing, could see how the muscles in his neck were taut under the flickering light, and she realized, with terrifying clarity, that Daniel was afraid, not of the failing structure, of losing her. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough. "I am," but he did not let go. His fingers remained wrapped around her arm, pressing through the fabric of her vest, and Hannah felt something spark inside her. Not fear, recognition. Her body recognized his, knew they belonged in the same space, the same frequency, the same kind of controlled chaos. "Daniel." He looked at her, and it felt as if the entire world condensed into that dark, damp, dangerous corridor. His eyes dropped to her mouth. It was not subtle. It was not disguised. It was hunger. Hannah lifted her hand instinctively, brushing away a dust stain from his cheek, and the touch was like electricity. Daniel closed his eyes for half a second, as if that simple gesture were enough to unravel every bit of control he had built over the years. When he opened his eyes again, something different stood there, something dangerous. He caught her hand before she could pull back, fingers weaving between hers, and drew her closer, eliminating any remaining space. "You unsettle me," he admitted, voice so low it was almost a whisper. "Good. It is not good. It is dangerous. Maybe you need a little danger." His gaze fell to her mouth again, and Hannah felt her heartbeat race, her stomach tighten, every nerve ending in her body wake as if struck by a live current. He was going to kiss her. She knew it. She could see it in the darkness of his eyes, in the way he leaned in the uneven rhythm of his breath, and then at the last second, he stepped back. He released her hand, took a step away, and his expression returned to the cold, controlled mask Hannah was beginning to despise. We need to get out of here. This section is not safe. Hannah stood still, processing what had just happened, or what had almost happened. Her body was still vibrating with the proximity, her skin still burning where he had touched, and her mind screamed in protest at that silent refusal. "Why did you do that?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "Do what? Get close, touch me. Look at me as if I were the only thing that mattered in the world, and then pull away as if I were radioactive." Daniel did not answer right away. He stood there under the unsteady light, wearing the expression of a man fighting an internal battle no one else could see. "Because touching you would mean crossing a line I cannot cross." "Why?" "Because I do not trust myself with you." The confession fell between them like a bomb, and Hannah felt something fracture inside her. It was not anger, it was understanding. Daniel was not rejecting her, he was protecting himself, because he knew, as well as she did, that if he touched her, there would be no turning back. "You are a coward," she said, and it was not accusation, it was observation. "I am a realist." Realistic is accepting that sometimes losing control is the only way to gain something real. Daniel stepped closer again, shrinking the distance he had created. "And what if I lose control and hurt you? And what if you do not lose it and hurt yourself instead?" They stood like that, facing each other, the dark corridor around them feeling smaller, tighter, more suffocating. Hannah could see the war happening inside him, could see how he wanted to give in, how he wanted to let the barriers fall, but he did not. He turned and began walking back toward the exit. "Come on, we have seen enough." Hannah stood, still for a few more seconds, watching him walk away, feeling something that was part anger, part desire, part pain. Then she followed, because in the end, she was just as stubborn as he was, and that meant neither of them was going to give up, even when they should. Hannah spent the entire weekend trying not to think about Daniel Pritzker. She tried to focus on the reports she needed to finish, the maps she needed to revise, the data she needed to organize. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the way he had looked at her in that dark corridor, the intensity, the desire, and then the cold rejection that came right after, as if she were a problem to be managed, not a woman he had almost kissed. On Monday morning, Allison noticed something was wrong before Hannah even opened her mouth. "Something happened," Allison said, not as a question, but as a fact. They were in the analysis room, surrounded by monitors displaying structural data, but Allison's attention was fully on her friend. "Nothing happened. That's the problem." "Explain." Hannah dropped the tablet onto the table harder than necessary. "He took me to the hidden section, showed me the secrets his father buried, told me things he probably never told anyone. And then, when everything felt different, when it felt like something real was finally happening between us, he pulled back, completely shut down, as if I were a threat, as if feeling anything was the worst mistake he could make." Allison pulled up a chair, crossing her legs with that improvised therapist posture she used whenever she sensed the conversation was serious. "He almost kissed you?" "Almost. But he didn't. Because Daniel Pritzker prefers control over connection. Or because he's afraid. Afraid of what? He runs an entire company, controls miles of underground infrastructure, makes decisions that affect thousands of people. What could he possibly fear about me?" Allison tilted her head. "That he can't control you. That you might see who he really is and decide he's not worth it. That opening up means losing again." She paused. "Hannah, you're involved with him, whether you like it or not. I'm not. You are. And you're denying it because admitting it means accepting you're not in control. That something is happening that goes beyond professional friction, beyond physical chemistry. You care, and that scares you just as much as it scares him." Hannah opened her mouth to deny it but couldn't, because Allison was right. She did care. She cared about the way Daniel carried the weight of the empire he inherited. She cared about the secrets he protected even when it hurt. She cared about the rare moments when he lowered his guard and let someone see beyond the armor. And that was terrifying. "What do I do?" Allison smiled. "You already know what to do. You're just afraid to do it." While Hannah fought her own contradictions, Daniel was facing a similar battle on the other side of the city. Scott entered his office without knocking. His signature move whenever he wanted to force conversations Daniel preferred to avoid, and dropped into the armchair with that intentionally casual posture he used like a shield. "So, you took her to the hidden section." Daniel didn't look up from the documents in front of him. "Do you have spies now?" "I have eyes, and a brain, and the basic ability to notice when my best friend is making impulsive decisions disguised as strategy." It wasn't impulsive, it was necessary. She found out. She was going to investigate alone. I preferred to control the situation. Control, of course. Scott crossed his arms. "And did you control it? Or did you lose control down there and almost do something you've been avoiding for weeks?" Daniel finally looked at him. His jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, you do. I know you. And I know when you're running from something. Or someone. I'm not running. You are. You would rather lose an honest, intelligent woman who challenges you in ways no one else does than face your own secrets, your own fears, your own inability to trust." Daniel stood and walked to the panoramic window overlooking the city. Far below, unseen by any passerby, the vast underground network he commanded stretched through the earth. His kingdom. His prison. "If I open up, she'll see what's underneath, and she'll leave. Or she'll stay. Because she'll finally know who you really are, not just the polished version you show the world. And what if she stays only to fix me? To save me? I don't need to be saved." Scott stood and walked to him, stopping at his side. "It's not about being saved. It's about not being alone. You built an empire, but you live in it like a prisoner. And Hannah is the first person in years who makes you want to open the door." Daniel didn't respond, because Scott was right, and admitting that aloud would mean crossing a line he had spent years building. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Let someone in. Trust. Risk." Scott placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "No one knows how. We learn by trying, and failing, and trying again." Daniel closed his eyes. "And what if I fail with her? Then at least you tried, and that's more than you've done in years." Hannah visited her parents that same afternoon, needing something that wasn't work, tunnels, or arrogant men, taking up too much space in her mind. Miranda was in the garden when she arrived, planting flowers with the patient precision that always calmed Hannah. Kirk sat on the porch reading, but looked up when his daughter approached. "Rough day?" Kirk asked. "Rough week." Miranda wiped her hands on a towel and sat beside her husband, motioning for Hannah to join them. "Tell us." Hannah took a breath. "He showed me something no one else knows. He let me in, and then, when everything felt real, he shut down. Like he regretted it. Like I was a mistake he almost made." Miranda exchanged a look with Kirk, that married for decades look that communicated entire conversations without words. "He's afraid," Miranda said gently but directly. "Afraid of opening up and being judged. Afraid of trusting and being betrayed. Afraid of loving and losing again. So what do I do? Wait? Push? Walk away? You do what is best for you, not for him." Miranda held her daughter's hand. "Love without truth cannot stand, Hannah. If he can't be honest about what he feels, there's no future there. Only pain." Kirk, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. "Sometimes fear is strongest in those who never learn to ask for help. Men like that magnate. They build fortresses around their hearts, not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much and don't know how to handle it." Hannah looked at her father. "Do you think he feels something for me?" "I think he does, and I think he's terrified." "And what am I supposed to do with that?" Kirk smiled, a sad, wise smile. "You decide whether it's worth waiting for someone to learn how to ask for help, or whether you deserve someone who already knows." The words stayed with Hannah the rest of the night, and the next morning, when she arrived at the city office to deliver the partial report, she was decided. She would step back. She would request that someone else take over the Pritzker infrastructure audit, because staying there near him, seeing him every day, feeling that tension grow without ever reaching resolution, was breaking something inside her she could not afford to lose. But before she could submit the request, she received a message from him. "I need to speak with you. Today. Urgent." Hannah almost ignored it, almost blocked the number, and moved on. But curiosity, that cursed curiosity that always dragged her into complicated situations, won. She went. Daniel was waiting for her in the office, but something was different. He looked tired. Not physically, emotionally, as if he had spent days fighting something and finally lost. "What do you want?" Hannah asked, staying close to the door, refusing to fully enter. "The data you collected in the hidden section. I need you not to include it in the official report." Hannah felt a cold jolt run down her spine. "What? That section cannot be exposed. Not now. Not like this. It would destroy the company, put hundreds of people out of work, ruin reputations. I need time to fix this internally before it becomes public. You're asking me to lie. I'm asking you to trust me." Hannah let out a short, humorless laugh. "Trust? You want me to trust you? The man who shuts down every time something real happens between us? The man who uses me when he needs information and discards me when I become inconvenient? I am not using you. You are. You took me to that section because you needed to control what I would find, not because you trusted me. And now you want me to hide the truth to protect you, to protect your secrets, to protect your company." Daniel took a step forward. "I'm asking because I have no other choice. You always have a choice. The difference is that you always choose the one that keeps you in control, the one that protects you, the one that doesn't require you to trust anyone but yourself." "Hannah, no." She lifted a hand, cutting him off. "You don't ask for help. You give orders. You don't trust. You manipulate. And I will not be manipulated. Not by you. Not by anyone." Daniel's jaw tightened, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Then what do you want? Do you want me to expose myself? Do you want me to destroy everything I built just to prove I trust you? I want you to be honest. With me. With yourself. About what you feel. About what you want. About what is happening between us." "Nothing is happening." The answer fell between them like a sentence, and Hannah felt something break inside her. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was just a cold, clear understanding that Daniel had made his choice, and she was not part of it. "Right. Then there's no problem." Hannah grabbed her backpack and walked toward the door. "I'll formally request to be removed from the audit. Someone else will take over. You no longer have to deal with me." Daniel remained still, and for the first time since they had met, Hannah saw something almost like panic in his eyes. "Hannah, wait. No. You chose. I chose too." She left the office, walked down the hallway, took the elevator, and only when she stepped outside into the sunlight did she allow herself to feel the pain she had been holding back. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was loss. Because she had lost something she never truly had. And Daniel, upstairs in the empty office, realized the same thing. But too late. 10 days. Hannah stayed away from Pritzker infrastructure for 10 full days, and it felt like amputating a limb and expecting the body to simply forget it had ever existed. She tried to dive into other projects, take on new contracts, focus on anything that did not involve underground tunnels or arrogant men with brown hair and eyes that seemed to see straight through her. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel. She saw the way he had looked at her when he said nothing was happening. She saw the raw, painful lie he had chosen over the truth that terrified them both. Allison tried to console her, but Hannah did not want consolation. She wanted to forget. She wanted her chest to stop aching every time the phone rang, and it was not him. She wanted her stomach to stop twisting every time she walked past that imposing building that commanded the city's underground. But the underground, as always, had its own plans. The call came on a Thursday at 2 in the morning. Hannah was awake, as she had been every night since she left, studying maps of a new project that did not excite her at all. When the phone vibrated and Scott's name appeared on the screen, she knew, even before answering, that something was terribly wrong. "Hannah," his voice was tense, stripped of his usual humor. "We need you." "What happened?" "Massive breach in the east sector. Tunnel 17, the one you flagged weeks ago. We did not give it enough attention. We thought we had time. We did not." He drew a shaky breath, and Hannah heard sirens in the background. The structure is giving way. We have teams trapped down there, and Daniel is with them. The world stopped. Hannah felt her blood turn to ice, felt her heart race with a force that had nothing to do with anger or hurt, and everything to do with absolute visceral fear. How many people? 7, including him. I am sending my structural data now. Activate the rescue teams. Evacuate every adjacent sector, and do not let anyone go down until I arrive. Hannah, you do not have to. I am already leaving. She hung up before Scott could argue, threw on her technical gear, still stained from the last time she had gone underground, grabbed her equipment pack and ran to her car. Her heart beat so loud it felt like it was trying to break free from her chest. It was not about work. It was not about professional ethics. It was about him, because the thought of Daniel, trapped 60 meters below ground, surrounded by concrete that could collapse at any second, was unbearable, unacceptable, something she could not process without feeling the world crumble around her. When she arrived, chaos had already taken over the site. Rescue vehicles, technical teams, Pritzker employees running everywhere, everyone speaking at once, everyone trying to coordinate something that was clearly spiraling out of control. Hannah got out of the car and headed straight for Scott, who was managing the operation with a forced calm that did not hide the panic in his eyes. What is the situation? Hannah asked with no preamble. The breach cracked the southern reinforcement. Water is filling the main corridor. The emergency pumps cannot keep up. Daniel and the team retreated to a safety chamber, but the structure is unstable. We have 20 minutes, maybe 30, before everything collapses. Hannah pulled out her tablet, opened the structural maps she had documented, and analyzed the available escape routes. There was one, only one, but it was risky. It required crossing the failing section, demanded perfect timing, and required someone who knew that tunnel like the back of their hand. I am going down. Hannah, no, it is too dangerous. I know that tunnel better than anyone here. I know where the structure is still solid. I know where to step, and I know how to get them out. She looked at Scott, and there was something fierce in her eyes, something that refused to be debated. I am going, and you will give me full access to the communication system. Scott hesitated for only a second before agreeing, because he knew, as well as she did, that there was no other option. Hannah descended the emergency stairs at a controlled speed, her helmet light cutting through the darkness, her pack heavy on her shoulders, and her heart beating at a rhythm that was far from healthy but absolutely necessary. The sound of rushing water was deafening. She could hear it invading the corridors, could feel the humidity rising with every step down, could see cracks spreading along the walls like living, pulsing veins. The radio crackled. Hannah, you are 50 meters from the safety chamber. East route is flooded. You need to take the auxiliary passage. Understood. She turned left, crossing a narrow stretch where the water already reached her ankles, and finally heard voices. Human voices. Real. Alive. And then she saw Daniel. He was standing, coordinating the team with that forced calm she knew too well, but there was something different in his posture. He was soaked, dirty, exhausted. The suit he always wore was ruined, the shirt clinging to his body, and there was a superficial cut on his forehead bleeding slowly. But he was still in control, still leading, still the relentless magnate who refused to show weakness, until he saw Hannah, and everything collapsed. For a second, just one, the mask fell. His eyes widened, his breath stuttered, and something like relief and panic flashed across his face at the same time. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice rough. My job, move, now, all of you. The main route is blocked. I know. We are taking the auxiliary corridor, but we need to move fast. The structure will not hold much longer. Daniel gave orders to the team, making sure the younger employees went first, ensuring no one panicked, ensuring everyone followed Hannah without question. Then, when everyone began moving, he stayed behind, making sure no one was left. Daniel, you need to go too, Hannah said, gripping his arm. I go last. I always go last. This is not the time for corporate heroics. It is not heroism. It is responsibility. They began to move, Hannah in front guiding the team, Daniel behind ensuring no one was left behind. The water was rising fast, already above their knees, and the sound of cracking concrete echoed through the walls like underground thunder. Hannah checked the structural points as they advanced, avoiding areas that showed signs of imminent collapse, shouting instructions that everyone followed without hesitation. They were only 20 meters from the emergency stairwell when the ceiling began to give way. Hannah heard it before she saw it, a sharp, violent crack followed by a metallic groan that made her stomach twist. She shouted for everyone to run, and the team bolted, splashing through the water with the speed of desperation. But then, a massive chunk of concrete broke loose directly above her. Daniel saw it before she could react. He ran, crossed the distance between them in 3 seconds, and yanked her aside with brutal force, throwing them both against the wall as the concrete slab crashed down exactly where Hannah had been half a second earlier. They stayed there, pressed against the wall, breathing hard, covered in dust and water, and for a moment neither of them moved. Daniel's arms were around her, shielding her with his own body, and Hannah could feel his heart pounding against her back, wild, unrestrained, human. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice raw, desperate. "I am." But he did not let her go. He kept holding her, as if releasing her meant losing her again, and Hannah felt something break inside her. It was not anger. It was not hurt. It was recognition. He was afraid, truly afraid. Afraid for her. "Daniel, we need to get out." "I know." But he still waited 3 full seconds before letting her go. 3 seconds in which Hannah felt the weight of everything he could not say. Everything he felt, but would not admit. They ran, caught up with the team, climbed the emergency stairs with the rising water chasing them like a living creature, and finally, reached the surface. The cold night air struck Hannah's face like a slap, and she took a deep breath, filling her lungs, her body shaking, with adrenaline and relief. The team was safe. Everyone was alive. But when Hannah turned to check on Daniel, he was already being surrounded by employees, paramedics, by Scott shouting orders and making sure everyone was examined. And Daniel, being Daniel, pushed them all away and walked straight toward Hannah. He stopped in front of her, dirty, soaked, exhausted, and for the first time since they met, there was something completely exposed on his face. It was not control. It was raw, unfiltered fear. "If anything had happened to you," he stopped, his voice breaking, his jaw clenching, "I would not forgive myself." Hannah felt her heart race, but nothing happened. "It could have. Because you went down, because I ignored what you flagged, because I chose pride over truth." He stepped closer, shrinking the space between them. "You were right. About everything. And I was a coward. I shut down when I should have opened up. I pushed you away when I should have held on." "Daniel, no, let me finish." He drew a shaky breath as if preparing to jump off a cliff. "I am afraid of you. I am afraid of what I feel. I am afraid of losing control. But I am even more afraid of losing you. And today, when I saw that concrete falling, when I thought I might not have time to tell you, I realized I have already lost too much because of fear. I have wasted too much because of control." Hannah felt her eyes burn, but she refused to let her emotions spill. "Not here. Not now." "And what do you want now?" Daniel cupped her face with both hands still dirty with concrete and water, and looked at her with an intensity that made the world around them disappear. "I want to try. I want to fail. I want to let you in, even if it means losing control, even if it means exposing everything, because you are worth the risk." And then, right there, under flashing sirens and surrounded by chaos, Daniel kissed her. It was not gentle. It was not calculated. It was desperate, hungry, real. His lips captured hers with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs, and Hannah felt her whole body respond as if struck by lightning. She gripped his soaked shirt, pulling him closer, kissing him back with the same hunger, the same urgency, the same need she had been swallowing for weeks. When they finally broke apart, breathless, filthy, exhausted, Hannah smiled. "Took you long enough." Daniel let out a low, rough, genuine laugh. "I know." And there, in the middle of chaos, they finally found something no underground structure could ever contain. Truth. The night had already passed by the time the rescue teams finally managed to stabilize the structure in the eastern sector. Industrial pumps worked non-stop to drain the infiltrated water. Engineers inspected every inch of the damaged tunnel, and Scott coordinated everything with an efficiency that barely masked the exhaustion etched across his face. The city was safe. The people were alive. But the emotional cost of that night was still being exacted. Hannah sat at the back of an ambulance, refusing for the third time to let the paramedic check her vital signs. She was not injured, just exhausted. Exhausted in a way that went beyond the physical, sinking into her bones, her mind, her heart that was still racing from adrenaline and something far more dangerous she refused to name. Daniel was on the other side of the parking lot, speaking with city officials, signing emergency documents, making sure every protocol was followed. Even covered in dirt, drenched with a cut on his forehead someone had cleaned, but not properly treated, he still commanded, still controlled, still carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders. But Hannah had seen something different down there. She had seen the man behind the mask, the man who was afraid, who felt, who had almost lost her and had not been able to hide the desperation. And now, watching him from afar, she did not know what to do with that knowledge. Scott approached her with 2 cups of coffee that tasted as if they had come from an old, defeated machine, but Hannah accepted it anyway. "He does not stop," Scott said, looking at Daniel. "Even after almost dying, he keeps giving orders as if nothing happened. It is what he does. He controls everything so he does not have to feel anything." Scott smiled, but there was sadness in the gesture. "You see him, clearly, better than most. I do not know if that is good or bad. It is terrifying for him and for you." Scott took a sip of the bitter coffee and grimaced. "He kissed you in front of everyone. Do you know what that means? That he acted on impulse, adrenaline. Near-death experiences make people do things they would not do under normal circumstances. Or it means he finally stopped lying to himself." Scott looked at her with that annoying perceptiveness good friends have. "Are you going to leave again?" "That depends." "On what?" "On him being honest, truly honest, not just in the heat of the moment. Not only when he thinks he is about to lose me, but every day, even when it is hard, even when it hurts." Scott nodded. "Fair." Daniel finished the official conversations nearly an hour later, and when he finally walked toward where Hannah sat, the fatigue was visible in every movement. He stopped a few feet away, as if uncertain whether he was welcome, and something inside her broke, because Daniel Pritzker never hesitated, never doubted, and seeing him like that, vulnerable and unsure, was both devastating and hopeful. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice hoarse from shouting orders down below. "That depends. Are you going to try to control me again, or are you going to be honest?" He flinched slightly, as if her words carried weight. "I will try to be honest. Trying is not enough. Then I will be." Hannah stood, handed the empty coffee cup to Scott, and motioned for Daniel to follow. They walked to a more secluded area, away from the rescue crews, away from curious eyes, and stopped beneath a street lamp that cast a circle of light in the middle of the darkness. "Talk," Hannah said, folding her arms. Daniel took a deep breath, running his hand through his wet, disheveled hair. "I do not know where to start." "Start with the why. Why did you shut down when everything suggested we were getting closer? Why did you push me away instead of letting me in?" "Because I am afraid." "Afraid of what? You run an entire company. You make decisions that affect thousands of lives. What could I possibly do that scares you so much?" Daniel looked at her, and there was something raw in his eyes, something he had never shown before. "You could know me, truly, and decide I am not worth it." Hannah felt something tighten in her chest, but it was not pain. It was understanding. "You hide behind concrete and silence because you are afraid to feel. I felt too much once and I lost everything. Your father," Daniel nodded, looking away for the first time. "He died when I was 28. Heart attack. No warning. No time to talk, to fix anything, to forgive. And all that was left were secrets, dirty decisions, illegal tunnels, falsified reports, bribes. He built an empire on lies, and I inherited not just the company, but the responsibility of hiding everything so the people who depend on it would not lose their jobs. And you have carried that alone ever since, because I do not trust anyone enough to share it." Hannah stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "Losing someone does not give you the right to lose those who are still here." Daniel finally looked at her again, and something inside him was breaking. something he had held together for so long, he no longer remembered what it felt like to let go. I do not know how to do this. I do not know how to trust without controlling. I do not know how to feel without being terrified of losing. My father taught me that power is solitude, that strong men do not need anyone, and I believed him. I built an empire on that logic. But then you appeared, and you destroyed everything. Destroyed? You made me question every wall I built, every secret I kept, every decision I made thinking I was protecting something when, in truth, I was only isolating myself. He stepped closer, and now they were so near that Hannah could see every detail of his face beneath the streetlight. You are the one map I cannot read alone, and for the first time, I want to lose myself with someone. Hannah's heart pounded harder, and something inside her softened. It was not anger, it was not hurt, it was surrender. Because those words, imperfect and honest, were more real than any flawless declaration could ever be. Are you going to let me in? She asked, her voice lower. Truly, not only when you are afraid of losing me, but every day, even when it is hard, even when it means giving up control. I will try. Daniel, I will. He held her face in his hands, his touch gentle yet firm. It will not be easy. I will make mistakes. I will shut down when I should open up. I will try to control things when I should trust. But I will try, because you are worth every mistake I make along the way. Hannah placed her hands over his, feeling the roughness of his skin, the contained strength, the unspoken promise. I am not going to fix you. I am not going to save you. I am not your redemption. I know, and I do not want you to be. I just want you to stay, even when it is hard, even when I am unbearable. You are always unbearable. He smiled, and it was the first time Hannah had ever seen that smile stripped of layers, calculation, defenses. And yet you came back, because I am stubborn, because you care. Hannah did not deny it, because it would have been a lie, and she had asked for honesty. She needed to give the same. Kiss me again, she said, and it was not a request. It was a challenge. Daniel did not hesitate. He pulled her closer with an urgency that made her stomach flip and captured her mouth with an intensity that stole the breath from her lungs. The kiss was different from the first. It was not desperate. It was a promise. It was surrender. It was the breaking of every barrier he had spent years building. Hannah felt his hands slide to her waist, pulling her even closer against his body, and she met him with the same hunger, the same need. She gripped his soaked shirt, feeling the tense muscles beneath the fabric, feeling the heat radiating from him even through the drenched clothes. The kiss deepened, and Hannah felt the world spin. She felt every nerve ending awaken. She felt her entire body vibrate with something that went beyond physical desire. It was recognition. It was connection. It was the certainty that, for the first time in a very long while, she was not alone, and neither was he. Daniel pressed her against the street lamp, eliminating any space between them, and Hannah felt his breath against her neck when he finally pulled back just enough to breathe. But he did not let go. He kept holding her as if releasing her meant losing everything all over again. You unbalance me, he murmured against her skin, his voice low, rough, weighted. Good. You need to be unbalanced. He laughed, a low, genuine sound that made her heart race even faster. Come with me. Where to? Home. My home. I do not want to let you go. Not tonight. Hannah should have hesitated. She should have thought about the consequences, the risks, the complications. But she did not. Because for the first time she did not want to think. She only wanted to feel. Then take me. And he did. Daniel's home was exactly what Hannah expected. Modern, minimalist, impeccable, but also empty. Not of furniture, of life. It was a functional space, efficient yet without soul, without photographs, without memories, without anything that suggested someone truly lived there. You do not spend much time here, do you? Hannah asked, dropping her backpack near the door. I spend time here, but it never felt important to turn it into a home. He watched her explore the space with that characteristic curiosity of hers. Do you think it is depressing? I think it is lonely. He did not deny it, because she was right. Daniel made coffee while Hannah took a shower in the guest bathroom. lending her clean clothes that were far too big but comfortable. When she returned, her wet hair falling in waves over her shoulders, wearing one of his shirts that reached halfway down her thighs, Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. It was not desire. Not only, it was possessiveness. It was the longing to see her there every day, to turn that empty space into something worth calling home. They sat on the sofa side by side, drinking coffee in a comfortable silence while the city woke up outside. And it was Hannah who broke the silence first. About the hidden section. I will include it in the report, but I will recommend that the company be given 6 months to regularize everything before it becomes public. Enough time to fix it without destroying everything. Daniel looked at her, surprised. Why? Because you are trying, and because I trust that you will do the right thing, even after everything? Especially after everything. He took her hand, intertwining their fingers, and they stayed like that, connected, while the sun rose outside and a new beginning slowly took shape between them. It was not perfect. It was not easy, but it was real. And for the first time, that was enough. 6 months. Half a year since that early morning when the underground nearly claimed lives, and Daniel Pritzker finally admitted he couldn't control everything. Half a year since Hannah Lewis decided it was worth the risk to trust her heart to a man who was still learning how to trust. And surprisingly, the 6 months hadn't been perfect, but they had been real. Arguments happened. Daniel still tried to control things that didn't need controlling. Hannah still challenged decisions he wished she'd accept without question, but something fundamental had changed. They no longer ran. They faced things, together. The launch of the new underground monitoring system by Pritzker Infrastructure took place on an autumn afternoon, just as the sun began to tilt over the city and the golden light cast long shadows across the streets. The event was technical, geared toward engineers, city officials, and urban infrastructure experts. No spotlights, no grand speeches, just a quiet recognition that something important had been built, something that would save lives. Hannah stood next to Daniel on the makeshift platform, wearing a dark blazer over clean cargo pants, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wasn't a Pritzker employee. She was an independent consultant, a technical partner, and behind the scenes, much more than that. But their agreement was clear. Professionalism in public, honesty in private. And it worked. Strangely, wonderfully, it worked. Scott approached with 2 cups of water and that infuriating grin he wore whenever he wanted to stir the pot. So, 6 months working together? You still haven't tried to kill each other. Impressive. Hannah took a cup. The day's not over yet. True. Daniel could decide to ignore one of your technical recommendations, and you might threaten him with a damning report. Your dynamic is poetic. Daniel rolled his eyes, but there was humor in the gesture. Don't you have anything better to do than comment on my personal life? I do. But this is more entertaining. Scott clapped his friend on the shoulder. Seriously, though, she's good for you. You smile more, complain less, you're still a control freak, but at least now you admit it. Thanks for the unsolicited psychological analysis. Anytime. Allison showed up moments later, hugging Hannah with genuine enthusiasm, and giving Daniel an appraising glance he pointedly ignored. So it's true. You tamed the Shadow Tycoon? Hannah laughed. No one tames Daniel Pritzker. At most, you negotiate a truce. And how's that going? Interesting, challenging, never. Boring. Allison smiled. Good. You deserve interesting. The event went on without surprises. Technical speeches were made, systems were demonstrated, and city officials nodded approvingly at the improvements. But the moment that truly mattered came afterward when most attendees had already left, and only a few remained. Miranda and Kirk arrived quietly, just as Hannah had arranged. Daniel saw them before Hannah did, and something twisted in his stomach. It wasn't fear. It was respect. Because meeting her parents meant crossing a line he'd never crossed with anyone. It meant admitting this wasn't fleeting, that there was a future. Hannah made the introductions simply. No excessive formalities. No unnecessary tension. Mom, Dad, this is Daniel. Miranda extended a hand with a warm smile that didn't quite hide the evaluation in her eyes. I've heard a lot about you. I hope half of it isn't true, Daniel replied, and Hannah noticed the effort it took for him to sound casual. Kirk shook his hand firmly but got straight to the point. Hannah says you're stubborn. I am. So is she. I noticed. Kirk smiled. Then you'll either get along great or kill each other. No middle ground. Daniel looked at Hannah, and something passed between them. Something that needed no words. We're figuring it out. Miranda watched the exchange with that maternal perception that sees past words. Good. Because my daughter doesn't waste time on men who aren't worth the effort. If she's here, it's because you are. The conversation flowed easily, marked by questions about work, the city, future plans. Nothing invasive, nothing dramatic, just the kind of conversation families have when they're meeting someone important. And when Miranda and Kirk finally said their goodbyes, Hannah realized Daniel had passed the test. Not because he tried to impress, but because he had been honest. Night had fallen by the time Daniel and Hannah walked together to the West Sector, the same place where everything had begun, where she had trespassed without permission, and he had caught her with that look of a man unused to being challenged. But now, months later, the space felt different. It was no longer hostile territory. It was something shared. They walked down the main corridor, now fully renovated, with modern lighting, updated sensors, and ventilation systems running without fault. It was efficient. It was safe. It was the opposite of what it had once been. Daniel stopped at a specific point and turned to Hannah. It was here. What was? Here's where I realized you were different. When you stood your ground without fear, without backing down. When you looked at me like I was just a man. Not a title. Not a last name. Just someone who was wrong and needed to hear it. Hannah smiled. You were wrong. I know. He walked over to the control panel and, with a few touches, turned off all the lights in the corridor. Darkness. Swallowed them for a second. Only the sound of their breathing echoing in the closed space. Then Daniel activated only a few emergency lights, strategically placed to create a dim, intimate atmosphere, almost cinematic. Hannah looked around, understanding exactly what he was doing. You still like the dark? Daniel walked toward her, stopping so close Hannah could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I like it when it's with you. You were the first light I didn't want to turn off. Her heart pounded, and Hannah realized that of all the things he had ever said to her, this was the most honest, the most raw, the most true. Good to know I'm useful, even when annoying. He smiled, pulling her gently by the waist. You are annoying, stubborn, inconvenient, and completely indispensable. Romantic. I'm trying. Hannah placed her hands on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the fabric. You're doing just fine. Daniel tilted his head, capturing her mouth in a kiss. Slow, deep, and filled with promise. It wasn't urgency. It was certainty. The understanding that they had weathered storms and come out on the other side. Different, but whole. When they parted, Hannah rested her head on his shoulder, and they stood there wrapped in each other's arms in the middle of a tunnel that had once been a battlefield, and was now something entirely different. What comes next? She asked softly. I don't know. I've never been good with surprises. Well, you'll have to learn. I don't plan anything. He chuckled. I know, it's terrifying. But you like it? I do. Against all logic. I do. They stayed like that a little longer, immersed in the kind of comfortable silence only two people who truly knew each other could share. And when they finally climbed back up to the surface, to the city above, blissfully unaware of the secrets beneath its streets, Daniel took her hand. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a public declaration. It was just recognition that she was there, that he wasn't alone anymore, that for the first time in years, the future felt less terrifying and more like a promise. Hannah squeezed his hand back and smiled, because in the end they didn't need perfect endings, just honest beginnings. And they had that. They had each other. And for now, for a long time, that was enough. Above them, the city kept turning, oblivious to the tunnels holding it steady. But down, here, 60 meters below asphalt and steel, something new had been built. Not just structures, not just monitoring systems, but trust, connection, love, the kind born from the cracks, grown in the dark, surviving because it was tested and chosen every single day. And Daniel Pritzker, the man who ruled the unseen, finally understood that true power didn't lie in controlling everything. It lay in choosing someone and being chosen in return. And Hannah Lewis, the woman who saw patterns where others only saw walls, finally understood that the most important map she'd ever draw wouldn't be of tunnels or infrastructure. It would be of two hearts, learning to find each other in the middle of chaos. And that, in the end, was everything. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next unforgettable romance. Leave a comment telling us which part captivated you most, and drop some hype to help this channel grow and keep bringing you even more intense emotional stories.